All right, people. Welcome to the stream. This is Leroon and Lady Shell. We are going to be doing a video series from A to Z. This is part two, so if you've missed part one, it's on our YouTube channel already. This was going to focus on basically connecting as a player. So I am going to do so. Lady Shell is actually going to be the host. She's got her session ready to go. So we're going to get right into it. So the first part of this is that when you're going to connect as a player, you have a couple different options now, whereas before you could only connect a certain way on Classic. Well, Fantasy Grounds Unity gives you like two different ways to connect. The first way that we're going to describe is basically similar, if not the same, as Classic. Right now, I am in the launch screen, and I am going to get the credentials from Lady Shell, which he's already given me ahead of time. I'm on the launch screen right now, and I want to click on Join Campaign. But if you've never used Fantasy Grounds, this is the launch screen, and it has a whole bunch of different links for help and that sort of thing. But the thing that we're going to focus on is Join Campaign. So if I'm going to join this campaign, I do have a history of connection with Lady Shell up here. So that is the cloud connection history that I used to test her connection. So I'm actually going to delete that because I have a feeling that once in a while that might be corrupt or it might contribute to mismatch. So I want to make sure that I'm actually starting fresh. Yes, the next thing I'm going to do is join by IP and port. Well, by default, Fantasy Grounds is port 1802. I don't think you could change that. But when you join by IP, the Game Master has to give you their actual IP address. This is the external one, not the internal IP. And what this does is it allows for your computers to connect to each other via the internet. And this is similar to how Classic works, except for you had the forward alias that the DM would give you, and that would mask the actual IP. I'm going to go ahead and plug in the address here and then hit start. And if it's successful, if you have the right IP address and your GM has completed all their port forwarding requirements, then you will get this acquiring file list, which is basically downloading any changes or any sort of cache or any of the modules or extensions or whatever it is that needs to be run on my table from Lady Shell's table in this case. So, and as you can see up here, it says the lobby is connected, but we're not actually using the lobby. And it has my username and then my version of Fantasy Grounds on the top right. So now it's saying file list downloaded, and now it's actually loading into the screen. So that was a successful launch so far. So we'll see what happens when we get to the actual screen. So really at this point, you want to let it load. Don't dink around too much. I think that could potentially be problematic because of the amount of RAM and those sort of things. So if you're running Fantasy Grounds, try not to fiddle around with Photoshop when you're in the middle of a stream. Something like that may not be good. If you're just on your own, you don't have anyone connected to you, it's probably not an issue. Opening or initializing Fantasy Grounds takes a big memory spike, so you might lose focus of your programs and they may not load properly.
Yeah, keep in mind that because when you use Unity, you're going to need maybe a more powerful computer or more RAM or more powerful program. So you might have this problem about things in the background. Yeah, explain what I'm saying, please.
So Lady Shell is trying to say that you might have to have a computer with a little bit better specs to run Fantasy Grounds Unity. Mainly the video memory and having hard drive space. This is the launch screen for the first connection attempt, which seems like it's successful. And now I'm going to actually exit Lady Shell's table. The right way to exit is to right click and click exit program. In this case, I'm just showing you the connectivity. I'm actually on the table. If I double click on this character or if I click the plus button, it will allow me to claim it. But we will show that on the next connection. So I went ahead and exited the table, hoping that, yep, there you go.
Now I exited the table and I've got to reload the cloud connection now.
So while she's doing that, I want to do some troubleshooting for you, at least talk about it a little. Generally, what happens is people will get frustrated because there's all different kinds of reasons that you may have connectivity problems. And a lot of that has to do with user experience and not really understanding quite what's happening with the program or whatever it may be. There are a few things that you can do ahead of time to make things a little bit easier on yourself and for troubleshooting. One thing is that I recommend, and it's not a requirement, it is only a recommendation, And the reason I recommend and qualify this is because I've seen it ever since I started using Fantasy Grounds. And that is using wireless connections. Wireless connections work, but in some cases they are not satisfactory enough to run Fantasy Grounds as a host. So if you're the game master and you are successful at running wireless connections, that's great. But as one precaution, if you don't have a good connection or enough bandwidth, you will run into issues. So that is something that you should consider before you flip out about your connectivity, is make sure that you're not losing packets and that you have a strong connection. Quite often when you're running through wireless, you get dropped packets, and once that starts happening, it can make it unstable. So one of the things to help you and your table, if you have any control over it, is try to plug into the actual Ethernet cable instead of going wireless. And I realize that a lot of players can't do that, but if you can do that as a host, that will eliminate a lot of problems. It just depends on your computer specs and such. And then the other thing is to make sure that you actually have the right information. So I am going to join the campaign once Lady Shell gives me the green light.
Oh, I'm ready.
So here I have the old connection history from when I connected to Lady Shell. So that was through the LAN. So I'm going to close that or delete it. And that is based off an older version of Fantasy Grounds. I have a feeling that if you try to connect through that, it's going to cause problems. So if you've both updated since that history file was created, I have a feeling there could be a little bit of corruption in there. So I could be wrong, but I try to do a fresh connect each time. I know it's a little bit more work, but I don't want to sit there and guess. So as a process of elimination, I would try your history and then delete the history and then try to connect fresh again. And that might solve your problem with connectivity. The other thing is if you get kicked off the table and you can't get back on, Fantasy Grounds server will sometimes consider that you're still connected even though you're not. It takes it a while to shed itself of your old connection. So if you're waiting to get back on the table, if you try to jump right back on, that may be an issue. So what I've done here is I'm going now to join through the Cloud Connect. This is password protected. Lady Shell has provided me with the password. And it is in the lobby now, and it's in alphabetical order. So I went ahead and just scrolled down, and I found her username, and the Cloud Connection game was what she called the game. So the first part of it is the user ID. The second part of it is the actual game name, or the session name. I don't have to add or join anything in the IP and port. That was for LAN connection. And join by GM, if you can get that to work, that's great, but I don't normally mess with that. And if you don't see the name of the person here right away, click refresh every now and then, and it should come back. Sometimes the server doesn't refresh or update right away, so that's why I'm saying that. So I'm going to go ahead and hit start. Are we ready, Shell?
Uh-oh. Oh, there you go.
So now you're talking, I just put in the password, and now it's acquiring the file list. So now you're talking Macs. So Macs have had a history of difficulty with the Fantasy Grounds platform in the way that it interfaces. I have yet to use it in the Mac environment, but I know that the older Mac changed their, it used to be able to work with Classic, but now you can't use the updated version of the OS because it doesn't use 32-bit programs. But as far as requirements have,
Catalina.
Catalina is what changed it. But as far as requirements, system requirements, those should be posted in the Fantasy Grounds forums where they are discussing the early release. So you do have to remember that the program is not fully optimized and that it is still in open release or open beta. So it's still kind of an early release scenario. I imagine they'll have that a little bit more fine-tuned in the future. I cannot speak on behalf of Fantasy Grounds, but I can tell you that it's better than it used to be. But as far as specs go, those should be on the web, and it should have a minimum requirements. Now, I don't know if they listed it for both Mac and Unity. I'm pretty sure they did. While I'm waiting for that to load.
Oh, okay.
Okay. There we go. And now...
Okay.
We'll have to fix that next time around. So I had a pop-up here that I dismissed because I'm not going to go through the basic setup of building a character. We're actually going to make two separate videos. 2A and 2B are going to be a character creation video and then a character creation customization video. So one will be a basic build, and the other one will take that same build and add all the automation and the fun stuff. So right now I have a couple different options. So I would probably ask my game master what books I would need or if I need to load anything. So the other thing is setting up the table. One of the things that happens when you first join is normally the dice tower is over here on the right. So when you see that over there, basically you want to resize your desktop and get everything set up. So I'm going to unlock this tower and put it back where I'd like to have it, which is here. Usually when you start, it's like way up here, and that's how big it is. So normally I make it a little bit wider and then drop this down so that it's not too huge, and then I have a little bit of viewing space. And then the next thing is to grab the combat tracker, and then at this point I would probably go to the library. And as you can see, I'm kind of meticulously placing my windows so that when I play, it's a lot easier for me to do so. The other thing is different types of characters. So at this point, we can either import a character if we need to, if the GM allows it. I can start a whole new sheet, which if you click the green plus button, it'll start a brand new sheet. Or I can pick a character that's already made here, Cynthia. She is a bard. And as you can see, I can actually control 2 characters. But if I do that, I have to click on the character, the portrait that I'm working with, so that I know which one I'm actually utilizing. So I have basically claim to the new character, and I have claim to the one that's already built. So this is Cynthia. She's a bard. And then Cynthia is now on the combat tracker along with the other one. So the game master would do that after the characters are built. And then the next thing is the library. If I needed to build a character, I would need to have a library book content to work from. So I want to turn this, if I wanted to build a character, I would change this library view to create PC. That way I just have the character creation buttons. And then the player's handbook is available to me. It looks like it's loaded. But if I go into modules and if I see something I want, like if I wanted Vex's mockery insult generator, I'd click load. But in this case, she's giving me access to the player's handbook. So this is
I improved it.
This is a basically just your beginning part. We're not going to go through character creation, but this is basically how you would start your table. And you would have this all set and ready to go for when you play. This is basically where you want to be when you join. So as you can tell, I'm already connected to Lady Shell's cloud connection. I haven't had any issues yet. Some people are having issues with dropping out, or when they do drop out, they can't get back in. And then other times, I guess it's been reported that sometimes when players are opening books, that it'll drop them out of Fantasy Grounds. So these are the types of issues that Smiteworks is working on at the moment. So hang in there and keep practicing. And if you have to use Classic for a while, that's fine. But just remember that the requirements are going to be different. And just because this is a 64-bit operating system and that you have a lot more RAM that you can work with, doesn't mean you can go hog wild and have like 2 gig maps and that sort of thing. Because if you share that over the internet, that's going to really break things. So meaning that if you try to share a file to a player that doesn't have a very good connection and you're dumping a huge file on them, that's not a good thing. So even though it's
also
good for
people
you,
that are further away from you too.
Yes, people that are across the world or wherever they're at, it's not a good idea to forward big huge files like that. It doesn't.
Can you preload stuff in Unity?
As of now, no.
Okay.
Not that I'm aware of. So
can you explain why you put the dice tower in the location where you have it?
Yeah, the reason I have it here, so if I want to roll a die, I can easily grab it. It's right next to all the dice. Or if I wanted to grab something off my character sheet, such as, let's say, perception. I can actually bookmark perception, and I have it down in the chat bar here, or in the hotkeys. And I just drag and drop it into the dice tower, and it's much quicker and easier. That way, it can just make your gameplay a lot smoother. I also do the same with initiative. I can drag and drop this, And then when my initiative is called upon, I just single click and it'll record my initiative in the combat tracker. So these are just little things to make life easier on you as a player. So that's pretty much all we need to cover, Lady Shell. We got about 5 or 10 more minutes at the most. If there's any other questions out there, the main focus of this was connecting to the table. Disconnecting would be similar. You would right click on it, and then I would hit exit program. That's the correct way, instead of going up to the top right and exiting from the close button. That could also corrupt your session if you don't exit the right way.
Yeah, it's harder on it to just like chop it off like
That's
that.
Right.
Yeah, can you explain why you put the character sheet next to the combat tracker on chat window as a player?
This is so that it's close, for one thing. And then I have this whole half of the screen left over for maps and whatever the GM presents. Also, I would be on my actions tab during a game for most of the session. And I'd want to be down below here where it has the two options, combat and actions. That way I can see all the spells and all the different things that I have. And if it's too crowded where you're having to scroll up and down like I'm doing right now, you can actually collapse these sections so that if you don't need them, then that's all you're left with. So it's just kind of up to what you need.
It's most noticeable when you're playing a character with spells.
Correct. So any character that has a bunch of detail on it, that's what you're going to see.
Hi, hey Scuba. He said, make sure to update your hotkeys after leveling up if you take a feat or get an SI or a proficiency bonus increases. It does not automatically update the hotkey.
That's right. The hotkey is static. It is not dynamic. So as you're leveling up your character, or even if you acquire a magic item, let's say you got a ring and it gives you a +1 bonus on initiative, it's not going to do that for you out of the hotkey. You have to redrag it. So in other words, I have to redrag the initiative and drop it on top. So anytime you level up or anything that affects or changes your ability scores or your skills or anything like that, that's going to affect everything. So what he's saying is make sure you update those once in a while and keep an eye on that. So your shortcut should kind of be more or less by session or situational, because sometimes if you drink a potion that gives you speed temporarily or something that actually affects your stats or your level, then that's going to definitely make a change on the roll. So yes, that is something that we don't normally mention because we just mainly do one shots and stuff, so we don't worry about it. But if you're doing a campaign, that is something you definitely want to consider.
Another thing is, while you can save anything into your hotbar down below, you probably do not want to save a ranged weapon attack because it will not deduct your arrows or crossbow bolts or whatever your ammo is.
So what she's saying is, if you drag this attack roll down to the hotkeys and you shoot something, it may or may not deduct properly.
Oh, it did.
In this case,
well, now I look like
no, it didn't.
Fantasy Grounds.
It did not.
Oh, it didn't?
No.
Oh, it did not.
No.
Okay.
So it doesn't deduct your ammo, and sometimes it doesn't pull over the correct modification. Like if you do a critical hit or something, it may not pick that stuff up.
Oh, you did do a critical.
Right. But I'm just saying it affects that. So be careful with shortcutting damage and weapon attacks and spells. So those you should do manually.
And if anyone is looking at the abilities, when I created this character, I decided I was going to use the 46 drop the lowest. Yeah, bad idea. Look at that 7 intelligence and that 9 wisdom. Yeah, this was not a good choice. I should have used the standard array.
Okay, so I think
really good charisma though.
So I think we've covered pretty much, what we need to cover for this episode. We're mainly focusing in on character setup and the connectivity. Anything else above and beyond this is chatter. So if there's not any other questions, then we can call it a stream.
Does anybody have any questions?
I don't look like it. So I think we'll call it a stream.
Bangs and Naughty Bits did make a comment that said that seems like you could cheat saving a temporary bonus effect to a hotkey.
Yeah, but it does show in the chat box. So, okay. So let's we'll call it a stream. Thanks, Lee Shell, for helping out, and we'll see you guys next time. And actually, it'll be part 3, but Lady Shell is gonna film 2A and 2B as a addendum to this.
It's a basic character creation, and then a character creation adding to that character additional customization. Our next stream for Fantasy Grounds Unity A through Z will be on the 30th at 1 p.m. Pacific time. We hope you'll join us again. And you can find this episode along with our other episodes on our YouTube page. So we thank you for coming. Hope you have a great Sunday or Monday if it's Monday by you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.